What if the worst thing about being born today is that you have no idea how easy your life actually is? Right now, you can turn on a light, drink clean water, call someone on the other side of the planet, walk into a store and buy food, and go to sleep without wondering whether an army, a plague, or starvation will reach your house before morning. But for most of human history, those things were luxuries people could only dream about. And some generations didn't just live through one disaster. They lived through several of them back to back. So tonight, we're going through some of the darkest moments in history, and the further we go, the worse they get. And the first one is terrifying because there was nowhere safe to run. After the Western Roman Empire collapsed in 476 AD, much of Europe entered a period of enormous political instability. The empire had once provided armies, trade networks, infrastructure, and institutions that helped keep society functioning. Then that system began breaking apart. Power disappeared, and everyone wanted to take its place. Wars and raids became more common, cities declined, trade shrank, and some once important buildings were abandoned, destroyed, or literally taken apart so their materials could be reused. But here's where it gets worse. This wasn't happening alone. During the same broad period came the Justinianic Plague, which devastated populations across the Mediterranean. Imagine watching the political world around you collapse while disease moves through the population at the same time. You wouldn't know whether the next thing coming for your family would be an army or a fever. But if you think that sounds like the worst possible combination, history wasn't finished. In 536 AD, another disaster struck. A massive volcanic eruption caused an extraordinary period of cooling, and for roughly 18 months, parts of Europe and Asia experienced unusually dark skies and falling temperatures. Food production suffered, famine followed, and strange weather events were recorded, including snowfall during summer in China. The cooling didn't simply disappear after one bad season either. Further eruptions contributed to a longer period of unusual climate conditions. Think about how terrifying that would feel. You're living in a world with almost no scientific understanding of volcanoes, climate, or atmospheric dust, and suddenly the sky changes. The sun seems weaker. Crops fail. Temperatures drop. Nobody can explain why. You don't know when it will stop. And then history gives us a different kind of nightmare, the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1351, the plague tore through Europe, killing an enormous portion of the population. Estimates vary widely, but the source script describes the possibility of 30 to 60% of Europe's population dying. Now put yourself inside one medieval town. You wake up and someone you know is sick. Then another person disappears. Then another. Streets that were full of people become quieter. There is no modern medicine, no antibiotics, and no clear understanding of how to stop the disease. And the truly horrifying part isn't just knowing people are dying. It's not knowing whether you are next. And that lesson became terrifyingly relevant only 17 years later. In October 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the United States and Soviet Union dangerously close to nuclear war. Nuclear missiles were positioned in Cuba, communication was tense, and the consequences of one wrong decision could have been catastrophic. But here's the part that sounds almost too ridiculous to be real. During the crisis, an American military base went on alert after a guard saw what appeared to be someone climbing the fence. Nuclear-armed aircraft were prepared to respond, until they discovered the intruder wasn't an enemy soldier. It was a bear. Think about that for a second. At a moment when two superpowers were staring at each other through nuclear weapons, a mistaken identification of a bear nearly became part of a chain of events that could have escalated into catastrophe. The terrifying lesson isn't really about the bear. It's that humans don't always need to want a disaster to cause one. Sometimes a mistake is enough. But history gets even stranger when you look upward. In 1883, Mexican astronomer José Bonilla observed hundreds of strange objects passing across his telescope and spent days documenting them. His observations were eventually dismissed as birds, insects, or other ordinary explanations. Nearly a century later, another interpretation emerged. The objects may have been fragments from a comet breaking apart near Earth. Later estimates suggested that if sufficiently large fragments had actually struck Earth, the consequences could have been catastrophic. Which means one of the strangest stories in history begins with a man looking through a telescope, and ends with the possibility that Earth narrowly avoided something much worse. Then humanity invented something that changed everything: metal. The Bronze Age brought settlements, agriculture, animal farming, metalworking, and the wheel. People could specialize, trade, build larger communities, and create tools that were far more advanced than simple stone implements. But progress didn't magically make life safe. Wealth became connected to land, agriculture, animals, trade, metals, and social status. And eventually, the Bronze Age gave way to the Iron Age, where iron became more widely available and durable tools helped societies expand even further. Then came the medieval world, and suddenly survival depended on more than food. Society became deeply divided by class. Nobles and wealthy merchants could possess land, servants, luxury goods, education, and protection, while ordinary people often faced exhausting work, poor food, limited health care, and dangerous conditions. And if a war came, you might not get a choice. If you were summoned, you could be forced into it. If you were injured, your ability to work could disappear. And if sickness arrived, even something as small as an infection could become life-threatening. So here's the thought that should actually keep you awake tonight. Every time you complain that modern life is difficult, remember that your ancestors didn't have to worry about slow Wi-Fi. They worried about whether there would be food tomorrow. They didn't worry about missing a paycheck. They worried about losing the entire harvest. They didn't worry about whether their phone battery would survive the night. They worried about whether their fire would. And somehow, through all of it, humans kept going. Wars came. Plagues came. Famines came. Empires collapsed. Cities burned. Climate changed. Economies crashed. Entire generations were thrown into disasters they never asked for. Yet somehow, you are here because every generation before you found a way to survive long enough to pass life forward. And maybe that's the most unsettling history fact of all. You are not living at the beginning of the human story. You're living at the end of thousands upon thousands of years of people surviving things that would be almost unimaginable to us today. So tonight, when you turn off the lights and climb into a warm bed, remember this. There were nights in human history when people looked into the darkness and had absolutely no idea if they would see another sunrise. You do. And that is why your comfortable night exists at all.